What is the box, and how do we think outside of it? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is the box, and how do we think outside of it? It's a common axiom in modern life to think outside of the box. Well, no one really adequately answers what is the box. So let's begin there. What is the box? So if we look at our existence in multidimensional reality, and we take a human, and we look at that human before they get put into the world, and they're just a human, they're just here, and then they're born, and in this case, they're going to be born into we'll call it a civilized country, like an industrialized modern country with infrastructure in the world of man, as opposed to like an aboriginal person who's just living in nature. The box doesn't really apply to them. The box seems to be a modern phenomenon, as we'll get into. So born into the modern world with buildings and laws and rules, civilization, society, all that stuff. This human being, as they go through the world in this infinite multidimensional universe, it gets collapsed down to, around them, a box, a tesseract in the universe. Rectangular coordinate grids that in the modern world are essentially defined by orthodox thinking, laws, economics, and a handful of other agreed upon ideologies that act in an extremely rigid way to curb behavior, curb thought, and to control perception. And the way the box looks to the naked eye is, so if you take this human and you put this human in a restaurant, now the restaurant's that box. That restaurant has rules and regulations and laws and etiquette and social norms and all the things, right? And now the restaurant is that box. And within that restaurant, there are things that you should do, there are things you should not do, there are things you should think, things you should not think. And those all aim to curb and limit behavior, pros and cons to that. And that's also the baseline for every Marx Brothers film. They're always operating inside a box. The box is, in their case, usually high society and high society norms and high society ways of thinking. And then the Marx Brothers show up and they lay waste to all of the fallibilities of how they're living inside that box. And they do it in a humorous way. They do positive destruction of social norms and ways of thinking before they introduce, whatever their joie de vivre is, their sort of just passion for life, sort of positive anarchy, and kind of pull the stick out of people's asses, so to say. Then you take that human and then you put him in a courtroom. Okay, now the courtroom is the box, right? And the courtroom is a tesseract in a different part of the multidimensional universe that has its own rules and regulations and expectations and things. And you do it again. You take that person and you put them in a classroom. Now that classroom is a box. And that classroom has all these norms and routines and expectations. And as we know from earlier videos, do our thoughts create our realities? When we're in these rooms, in these tesseracts with agreed upon thoughts that everyone in the room is projecting, and they have agreed that those rooms and the behavior and thoughts in those rooms have agreed upon consequences in later sequencing of events in other boxes and other scenes and other rooms, then you start to get a routine. You start to get repetitive behavior. And it doesn't matter which of these boxes have which rules or have which norms. It can be classrooms, it can be grocery stores, it can be sporting events, it can be churches, synagogues, subway stations, cars. Anything can be the box. And people like having the box be understandable, because when you go into the box, you have an idea of what's occurring, as opposed to some kind of, Kafkaesque nightmare or some sort of, Dadaistic, like, insanity occurring or nonsense occurring or absurdity, and when we really zoom out on it, and we know that life is a series of chain of events. So the idea is that people get really comfortable if they get into an orthodox groove of thinking in the artificial, man-made, created world, which really is comprised of nothing but boxes, like one box after the other box. Your bedroom is a box, your living room is a box, your family room is a box, your shower is a box, your workplace is a box, your car is a box. Everything is a box, right? And essentially, all of those boxes are controlled by unseen authorities, whether they're legal authorities, political authorities, economic authorities, spiritual authorities, it doesn't matter, right? So now when you see that all of these things are boxes, and even things that don't look like boxes can be turned into boxes, like in America when they made the national parks and state parks, and the outside have to be subject to government control, that made even nature turn into a box. Oh, you have to pay fees, and you have to think this way, and you have to behave this way, and you have to keep your clothes on. You can't like hunt the animal. Da 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 da. Oh, well, now nature is just a box. And even if you go all the way up to like climate politics, they're just trying to turn Earth into a box. Like, oh well, the whole Earth is a box. Everything is regulatory. Like everything has to be thought about a certain way and behaved in a certain way, and this and this and this and this, right? And so there's been an attempt in this version of reality to make everything the box. And they can do it by making anywhere you show up be a tesseract where they have control of all the thoughts that are occurring in that box. You can call it the matrix. If you break it down into math, we know that you can break the metaphysical level down of a reality down into a matrix value set, which is like in math, it's the subset number, the brackets with like, the 9 placeholder numbers, which you can assign any function or any variable to. And that's essentially what the law and the spiritual authorities and the political authorities and all those people do with the box. They're fighting for control and resources from the boxes, because once you know what the box is, you can scan society and you can see what any kind of permutation of the box can be. And therefore, you can take control excuse me, therefore you can take control of essentially the entire known reality once you've identified what the base number of potential boxes are. You can craft legislation to take control of the entire reality. You can do anything you want once you've identified the base number of permutations of realities that can exist in these boxes. Okay? So in broad strokes, that's what, when they say think outside the box, that's what the box is. The box is these highly regulated areas of life where certain thoughts are dominant. And it doesn't mean that they're true, and it doesn't mean that they work, because history is a catalog of showing the absurd plays that occur within these boxes. People trying to like mentally fit themselves in, and emotionally fit themselves in, and socially fit themselves into these boxes that are filled with rules and thoughts that are preposterous, right? So, and that's not to say that a lot of people find comfort in that. Like a lot of college degrees are really just, hey, I've been trained to operate in these boxes, right? A lot of these positions in society are really just people saying, hey, you can trust me to never break these boxes. I'll administer these boxes to other people. Like I'll be like a box warden, I'll overlook these things and I won't break the sanctity. They consider them like sacred, like, oh, well, this is the way this box works. And some people even try to create new boxes with new rules, but they like fit into the system, right? Because all the boxes are a system. And that's kind of the point of them, is that there's an agreed upon orthodoxy in them and that they're under control, which means that they're feeding into a power system somewhere. So when we get to a point where we realize that that's what the box is, and we decide that it's time to think outside the box, you have to be able to understand that that is what the box is. And then you can start to go, oh, I need to remove myself from the situation, get outside of this particular box and look at it from the outside and start bringing higher intelligences and outside perspectives to bear on whatever that particular box is. Right? And it doesn't really matter if that thought that you bring into that particular box is completely original or it's just one that's new to that particular box. That's the other thing too, right? It doesn't have to be a brand spanking new idea. It just has to be something that's being newly introduced into that particular box. So, I mean, you know, like it could be a sports rule that's adopted from another league that works. Oh, they have a different rule about this. Once you bring in and go, oh, that's really thinking outside the box. Or in a sports example, if you really wanted to think outside the box, you could say, oh, now, you know, we're playing football / soccer. Oh, well, what would be if we had now? What if there were 2 balls in play? What if when we went to overtime, we had 2 soccer balls on the field at the same time, and whoever scored first won? Right? That would be an original out of the box idea. And of course, like even just saying that, it sounds insane. You're like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. That's crazy. That's sacrilegious, right? And it's like that for any truly out of the box idea. Because the box has reached a stasis with itself, even if it's crap, even if it's like not a well-constructed reality or scene within that box. And once again, history is just littered with examples of those boxes being totally incorrect. Some of them even just downright insane or masochistic or just evil, right? And that's another good reason. Like, what's the utility of thinking outside the box? Now that we know what the box is, and now we know just basics on how to think outside of it, which is you remove yourself from the situation, either physically or through meditation. You can elevate your consciousness outside of what is there. Although many times in these scenarios, you're going to have to ignore the people that are overwatching the box because their job is to keep you in it. And for most great thinkers, or even like highly above average thinkers, and certainly original thinkers, this is the first battle of your life. Like most people, you know, when you're going through early educational programs, a lot of the subtext of an educational program is to make you compliant to the box or box compliant. That's their goal, whether they know it or not. Now, a lot of them do know that's exactly what it is, and a lot of them don't. And then when original thinkers start to come in and they start to exceed those areas and start to have out-of-the-box ideas, you know, they'll be like, well, we really, okay, that's nice, but really what we want is control of you. We really want control of your mind. We want you to be, this is more of a, we're more getting you an obedience school training. Like when you go to get an MBA at Harvard, they don't really care if you're a great entrepreneur. They really care if like you're going to validate their orthodoxy, right? Oh, well, you know, we're Harvard and we're great. So here are your papers like a good little doggy. And it's not to say they don't have value. It's not to say that they don't have, you know, the basics down, but they have an underlying orthodoxy of thought, which has led to the present moment, which most people agree is not great. So a lot of educational institutions are really just about training you to be efficient box dwellers. So anytime you start to exhibit thoughts that are outside of the box, they'll start to do things like, oh, we'll give you bad grades, disciplinary action, they'll shame you, they'll do whatever it takes to get you back in the box. And that's usually the first battle that people find, that they encounter when they start, well, thinking for themselves. So you have the box, you have the ability to think outside of it, and what are some of the good reasons for thinking outside of the box? Well, for one, it's your sanity. Like, you can't really become yourself until you start thinking outside of the orthodoxy. You just can't, because you're going to have thoughts that don't fit in, and it doesn't mean you can't make a living, or it doesn't mean you can't be your full self while still, like, having a degree and working a particular job. But if you're really going to be yourself and expand yourself, it's always going to exceed these boxes, because the boxes are artificial and they're constructed by thoughts from other people. So in order to become yourself, you're going to have to exceed it. At some point, when you become yourself, you will exceed these boxes. That's just a fact. And then the other utility of it is that we do need the boxes, because we do need to have routines and etiquettes and understandings of the way certain scenes work in life so that life can work. Civilization in and of itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it can be the most amazing thing. But it can only be the most amazing thing if the people that are going through these successions of boxes, whether it's like school, work, restaurant, recreation, spirituality, entertainment, and then you sort of repeat the whole cycle. Society can only get great if people are aware that they're going through these boxes, and then that they can contribute to the improvement of the quality of the experience within these boxes. That's the truest form of, direct democracy. There's no government on earth that does direct democracy, because that would require everybody to show up, 1-for-1 vote on every policy. That doesn't exist on earth. But we have direct democracy in terms of running our reality, where, there's more democracy on Yelp than there is at the ballot box. Like, if you go in and you like a situation, then you let people know. And if you have suggestions for improvement, you suggest them. And if you think things suck and you want to tell them why, you can tell them, right, on Yelp or wherever, where you can directly communicate about your experience in a box. And usually people in the modern world, they really think they rate their life as a good quality of life if enough of the boxes that they spend their day in consecutively are quality and tailored to what they enjoy. It's as simple as that. The whole world could be falling apart, but if a person has their 5 things they do in a day that work for them, they're going to be happy, and they're going to generally rate the world as a good experience. So that's the utility of being aware of the box and being able to think outside of it. It's not that you're constantly trying to escape it. It's that the number one way to improve the experience in the box is to be able to see it from outside of the box and bring new ideas in. And that's also the catalyst for social growth and societal growth and economic growth, is the continual expansion and ascension of quality of the experience that we're having inside the box. So I hope you found this helpful. What is the box? Now we know what the box is. Now we know how to think outside of it. There's many ways to think outside of it. Some people, that's why a lot of people are proponents of not just meditation and mind-altering activities and exercises, but also of, like, psychedelics and other consciousness-altering activities, because they can give you a broader perspective, and the broader perspective cannot be contained by the box. And I would say to anybody out there that if you're engaged in consciousness-expanding activities and mind-expanding activities, that you don't completely turn your back on the box. That at some point, the most useful thing you can do when you're outside of it is to return with some good ideas and to help improve the situation, because we're always going to have the boxes. It's just a matter of, like, how nice and humane and enjoyable those boxes are. So, well, I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. It's all up here, so think free, be free, and have fun.